Welcome back to Dos and Toss. We have a very, very special episode tonight. Obviously, we have our weekly episodes, but I think it's our first guest episode for the season. Is that right, Dean?
Yes, I believe so.
Very, very exciting. We're bringing on the host of the Keeper League podcast, also the king of the match simulations, Heff. Welcome to Dos and Toss.
King of the match simulations, yeah, that's a new one. But no, thank you for having me. I think on the AFL website, Warney actually used Heffs as a unit of measurement as well this year. So I'm still coming to terms with that one. But no, thank you for the introduction.
No, you saved us all in the pre-season, or maybe you didn't. Chase, you're 1 and 2.
Yeah, well, but we're both 1 and 2 in our fantasy league. So I did read a lot into the match sims, into the preseason. I'm a big believer that the preseason is important for our fantasy draft, but haven't been very successful over the last few years. Heff, look, I've only messaged you on Instagram, haven't really got to know you. What else do you do aside from the Keeper League podcast? Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, what else do I do? I coach an under-8s soccer team. It's probably taken up most of my time at the moment. But apart from that, I was a teacher for 10 years, specialising in music technologies. So teaching students how to produce music, make music on computers essentially. A little bit of technology as well in there, so like a bit of coding and things like that with students. I started the Keeper League podcast on the side about 8 years ago, just as a bit of fun, and it's kind of just built until it's kind of become my full-time gig, along with producing a couple other podcasts and things like that at the moment in my home-based studio here. So yeah, that's pretty much it. I was a teacher, now I'm a podcast host and an under-8 soccer coach. That's about it.
Man, that's huge. I had a look at your setup. I think you put that video up maybe a couple of weeks ago about your setup and how it all works, and I'm still learning the ropes. So we've got a bit of a makeshift home studio here. But honestly, that's the dream, just to have a studio at your home. You've got your two angle setup, multi-switching, you've got it all set up there, don't you?
Yeah, I've got capacity for a third, but I only have ever one person here, so I never use the third angle. But yeah, but the thing is, it's all just we started off the same way, you know what I mean? It looked pretty similar to what you guys are now when we started. If not, you guys have probably got a more advanced setup than we probably did. We had a 2-channel audio interface, 2 SM58 microphones. Your microphones are a lot better than the ones we had. And and we just sat around at Kay's, my old co-host's kitchen table in a non-soundproof room, and that's how we started. And, as soon as you start kind of earning a bit of money or revenue from the podcast, you just start putting all that gear back, all that revenue back into the podcast, buying new gear. And like I said, 8 years time, this is what it kind of builds up to. So, start small, but it can lead to somewhere big in the end.
I think that's what it's about. It makes it all worthwhile. We started in COVID on Zoom. The audio was very rusty. Look back, and we were much younger as well. And now in our 6th season, it's really nice to see everything come to fruition. And maybe one day we'll have our own studio. I know Chase will.
Yeah, maybe. Working out of Backchat Studios at the moment. They've got a nice setup there, but I reckon it can be a bit better, to be honest. It can be more dynamic. I can honestly talk about podcast studios the whole episode, but we won't. We're going to talk a bit about fantasy, about footy, what's going on at the moment, and I think it's just really refreshing to be able to talk about AFL Fantasy without being shunned by anyone else. Even our other co-host on this podcast, Brody, he often tells us, there's more to life than fantasy. Look, maybe there's not. Honestly, I think it's... I say I have 3 addictions in life. Coffee, probably my phone, and AFL Fantasy. So, yeah, I love it. Happy to delve into some of the fantasy trends at the moment as well. But Heff, are you just a fantasy nuff, or do you just do it just because you know your way around it?
Yeah, see, I started off as just a full-on fantasy nuff, absolutely loved it, lived and breathed it. Now that it's become a bit of a job, I kind of have stripped it back a lot. I don't play any of the salary cap formats anymore. Exclusively only play on the Keeper app now, and only play draft formats now as well. So it used to be a full-on nuff. It's more so now that since I've started this podcast, like there was so many skills and things that I never had when I started that I have now. And it's mainly in like the data analysis, the coding, the data scraping, all that sort of stuff, which I never had. And I've used that fantasy as kind of a vehicle to learn all of that stuff, if you know what I mean. So like fantasy is kind of like the motivation, but then I use it to kind of learn new things. Like, so for example, I'm putting out all these graphics at the moment that are stats-based graphics and stuff like that. But the kind of process behind that was like learning how to use like this JavaScript package called Canvas, and like just trying to feed stat databases into things that generate images that are nicely presented for people to look at and stuff like that. And it's all done with one click of a button type thing. I don't really have to do any editing each week or anything like that. The app itself that I built just spits out all my images for my social media for the week. So like fantasy is almost like that for me now. It's like that kind of, it's the kind of background thing or the side thing to kind of funnel into my next kind of like obsession, if you know what I mean. So yeah, like used to be enough, but now more so just kind of play against friends and in the Shiva competition as well. I don't really play for Classic, don't play Salary Cap, don't play Supercoach anymore, don't really play for ranking or anything like that. It's just more about playing against your mates, trying to win my league trophy, and that's about it really.
That's the same with us. Dean, obviously, Heff, you mentioned the Keeper app, and Dean, take us back to 2020, last year, early 2025. We just finished our draft, putting the teams into the fantasy app. We played the first couple rounds, and it just wasn't hitting the same.
Yeah, so I'm the commissioner of our league, which is it's in its 12th season. And obviously after Ultimate Footy, we had to pivot. We joined AFL Fantasy. It was okay. And then last year, after round 2, I particularly was very unhappy with the setup on the iOS app. And, you know, when fantasy's not going well, as Chase mentioned, it can derail the rest of your life. And so I was looking frantically at what to do. It was round 2 and spoke to a few people and found out about Keeper. And then I remember that next day I went for coffee with a mate and we just spent the whole time transitioning the league onto Keeper, entering in everyone's teams, and we've been so happy ever since. Genuinely, it's such a clean format. I'm the biggest advocate for Keeper. I tell anyone who's not on Keeper, my brother still hasn't been convinced. Hopefully he is after this pod. And yeah, I could talk about how much better Keeper is all day, but yeah.
Yeah, I've been very, very lucky to actually work on the project. When Ryan Power came to me, basically telling me that he was going to be building this thing, like it was, knowing that he had built Ultimate Footy as well, to be like a part of it from kind of day dot, I guess, was, it's a pretty awesome feeling. And I've only really had like background kind of consultancy, like, you know, bouncing ideas. Like, I guess the year before Keeper was made, we'd probably catch up like once a month just online, because he lives in Melbourne, I live in Adelaide, obviously, but never actually met him before. Just wanted to pick my brains, and then we ended up just kind of fleshing out ideas for this new fantasy draft app. And then that kind of turned out to be like monthly catch-ups. Then ended up doing some marketing work for it and some advertising work for it, kind of making all the ads for it as well, and kind of have become part of, I guess, the Keeper inner sanctum on the back of that. So it's actually been pretty cool to kind of be involved with an actual AFL fantasy platform from the get-go. Yeah, probably an opportunity I would have never had, you know, if I would have stuck with the main AFL fantasy platform and stuff like that as well. So no, it's been a pretty cool experience, and it's just been awesome to see it like blossom and flourish, really, because like Ryan's such a great developer that he kind of is, I don't know, if you work in development teams and, you know, big development projects, I guess, like it's very hard to make changes. You know, you have to approve things, get things ticked off, and I send it off to draw up a plan, send it off to a development team. Then 6 weeks later, you might get the code back, and then you can update things. Whereas like he's just at the app the whole time, just punching out code really, and just making improvements to the app the whole time, and just adding new bits and pieces that just make it so good for users, and just listening to what people want and adding it in there. And it's kind of like, it's just a fantasy platform, I think, all of people like us that have played draft and Keeper leagues, we've always wanted, and we finally got it now in Keeper.
Yeah, beautiful. It's really nice to like hear the backstory of the app. Because Dean, you've been on Ultimate Footy and then Keeper for longer than I have. I think the league's now 12 years old.
Yeah.
I've only been in it for 6, I think. So yeah, no, it's cool to kind of see the makings of it. And like I'm not, I don't really come from a coding background, but I can appreciate all the little niche things, and we have a lot of niche rules and traditions in our league. I think Dean's written a few emails to Ryan about getting some new rules and customizations to scores, etc. Yeah, we've got a few different niche rules and traditions. Dean, do you want to go over them? And Heff, you can also tell us a little bit about how you do your Shiva draft.
Yeah, so a lot of these rules stem from my dad's league, which has been going for 30 years.
I love that.
There's just some great fantasy stories. It really brings people together and keeps the friendship going. But we'll start off with at our draft. We actually don't draft online. So we draft on a Google Sheets, but most of us come to the draft with the printed averages of the year before. And when you have your pick, say I'm taking Jordan Dawson, I'll say Jordan Dawson 109.7, and everyone physically with pen in hand crosses the name off. And we go for about 36 rounds.
Yep.
And that is because we do a mid-season draft. So we don't do any pickups or delistings during the season. So no waivers or anything. We go in between rounds 11 to 12. We'll do a mid-season draft. And at that mid-season draft, we start off with about an hour and a half of trades where you can trade your picks, your players, and the picks are for that mid-season draft. So then we transition into about 15 minutes of delistings. After the delisting stage, you work out how many players you need to pick up in the mid-season draft. And let's say you need to pick up 7 and you're second last on the ladder, then it's not a snake order. You'll get pick 2 every single round. And what I personally love about it is the capital that you can trade with that pick. So I could package up pick 2 and Lawson Humphreys and get, I don't know, a Dane Zorko or something like that. It makes it very fun, very even, and very interesting because you're never out of it. We've seen teams come from last on the ladder to make finals, but yeah.
Yeah, that mid-season trade period can get pretty heated as well. Because we trade for about like an hour and a half before we do that draft of the waivers, I guess, and it's really difficult to just get your person's attention that you want to trade with, and it can get pretty heated. I think it got pretty heated last year, to be honest, and no one seems to want to trade with me. I don't know, they don't want to negotiate with me, but it's a story for another day. I don't know why everyone hates me in this league. Maybe because I'm a fanatic.
But it's also another time to come together. I call draft day the best day of the year. I'm sure
100%.
You would agree. Chase would concur. Well, the mid-season draft is the second best day of the year because it's the same group coming together. You get to talk about what's been going on in the season, plan your season for the rest of the year, and it's pretty niche. I haven't heard of many other leagues which do it.
Yeah, Heff, do you want to speak to us just about the Shiva draft? Because I've seen a little bit about it, but I'm not exactly sure how it all runs.
Yeah, the Shiva is the national competition. I've only actually been a part of it for 3 years now. Like I've had my own keeper league, which has been going since I think 2013, I reckon. And then I've had another one that's been going since about 2020, I reckon, with another group of mates. But the Shiva is kind of unique because it is a national competition. You pay an entry fee, you get placed in a league, and it's ranked by division. So Div 1 through to, I think it's through to 70 odd these days. It's quite a big competition with everyone kind of around Australia. There's one draft day, everyone logs in and you pick your teams, and it's like a relegation promotion type system. So if you win your league, you get promoted to the next league up. But then also you get a chance to play in the Champions League as well. So you draft a separate team for your Champions League team. And then, like, if you win the Champions League, you can kind of, for example, like I was when I joined, I was placed in Div 26, I reckon, because it was just, it had already been going, and that's where I landed. I'm now in Div 22, I think, but I'm in the Champions League 2, And if I win Champions League 2, I think I get put into Div 2 after that. So it's a kind of way to like bypass, having to work your way up all those divisions to get up to the top divisions of Shiva. So if you win the Champions League, you can kind of move up. So that's essentially how it works. It's just a massive draft league, I guess, but with like relegation promotion system and a Champions League built in that helps you move up the ranks a bit quicker.
Can you explain the Champions League for us?
I'll pretty much just like anyone who wins their league wins their premiership in their division. So, I think Div 1 through to, or don't think Div 1 really matters because you're in Div 1, but anywhere from Div 2 down to I think probably Div 13, if you win your league there, you get placed into Champions League, and then if you win the Champions League, you can go up to Div 1. So you could essentially like go from Div 13 or whatever up to Div 1 the next it's kind of just a way to let the people that you're gonna have to, like, for example, I'm in Div 22 to get up to Div 1 just by winning a flag each year. I'm gonna have to win a flag every year for 22 years to get up to Div 1. But if you win the Champions League, you can skip to the top, and that's kind of the basis behind it.
Yeah, that makes sense. I don't think everyone's going to be playing fantasy for 20 years, although I
probably will be. But
yeah, same.
Yeah. Do you have any niche rules? Like we'll touch on one of ours that we play with, but in your own personal keeper leagues, keeper draft, do you have any niche rules?
Nothing super niche, I don't think. Like we used to have just like random things and simple things, just like punting challenges to like figure out draft orders, but they were weighted by your previous year's finishing spot. So like you didn't. It was almost like a lottery system, but you still had to place a bet on something. So that was kind of the way that they did that. But yeah, nothing major. Like we've had a few like niche traditions, like where I think one year we had like a cutout, and like all the places that were like players that were likely to go in the first 1 or 2 rounds, there was actually like a cutout of their face and the Guernsey of your team Guernsey. And like when you made the pick, you had to put the Guernsey on them, the cut out of the face, and get a photo with them, or hand them the Guernsey or whatever, like that sort of stuff, like you see on the draft nights and things like that. But apart from that, nothing other than like really just, it's probably some of the guys in my league, like draft night is the only night I actually see them for the whole year. Just getting older with kids and that sort of stuff, like it's pretty hard to catch up. And in one, like my main league is all my old footy mates, and like we're all too old to play footy now. Really, I think we're all retired. I think there's a few D graders still running around in their 40s, but probably should give it away. But yeah, like we're all too old, like kids and all that sort of stuff now. It's very hard to catch up. So it's probably just like the one night per year where we actually get to do that. But wouldn't know about niche rules or traditions. Like I guess like yours, we have 3 mid-season drafts, one after each position change thing, and you can only take one pick in the each mid-season draft though, and you have to drop another player to gain access to that pick. That just works in reverse ladder order. So it's kind of good, like if you're bottom, and I think a few years ago someone had Nick Martin like come through, was a pretty good pickup because you just get bottom team gets access to another premium. This year we'll probably have Milan Murdoch that a lot of people will be going after, I'd say. Like, yeah, there's a few bits like that kind of come in, and you can kind of flip a team. There was the guy ended up winning the flag in our league last year. I think he was third to bottom come first pickup, and he picked up Jack Gunston, who ended up just being like a really serviceable, almost an 80 average forward for him, and probably did average 80 from that point onwards, you know what I mean? Just given those hit a few low first few round scores. And like it can really flip a league, or, flip a team if you can get one of those good mid-season draft picks.
Speaking of Gunston, Chase did a deep dive on him the other day randomly, which speaks to his Nuffy status. He comes to me, he's like, did you know Gunston averaged 85 in 2017?
Yeah, no, I'm not that much of a loser. I just I did draft Gunston into my team, and I don't know, like I just really love stats and numbers, and I know Gunston had a few All-Australian years, maybe one in 2018 as well as last year, and I like to see like the history of their averages, and I scrolled down in 2017, 2018, and he's like averaging in the mid 80s. I'm like, damn, this guy was pretty good back in the day, because I didn't play in those years, so. No, I just like to do my history. I love numbers.
You should have seen like back in prime Rewalt, prime Buddy, those sort of years, like guys like legit averaging like 90 to 100 as key forwards. Like it's a different game now, but yeah, like, you know, Jonathan Brown, I remember my first fantasy team I ever made probably back in 2003, I reckon it was. Like Jonathan Brown was one of the best forwards, and like, you know, a key forward is probably unimaginable these days. Like that would be your first pick player, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Having said that, Josh Tracy did drop 120 on me on the weekend, but yeah, still got the win.
He's got average.
We alluded to our format earlier, but we didn't actually discuss some of the rules we have. So we have a few niche rules. One being we don't use captains. Not really for any particular reason. We've just never done it, and no one's really pushed for it, so we've left it at that. And the second one, which is my personal favourite, I think everyone in our league's favourite, is the rookie rule. So we give a plus 20 to any rookie, and to be considered a rookie, you have to have played 0 career games heading into the season. For instance, Jagger Smith, I took him in round 6, and he's been dropping hundreds for me every week. And that is my favourite rule because it diversifies the draft, because no one really knows when you're going to take your rookies. You don't really know what they're going to average. Like, someone took Blamiers and Dersma really late this year because they didn't look like they'd be that good of scorers, but they've been great in the first 3 rounds. And yeah, I could speak for days about the rookie rule, but what are your thoughts on that one? Have you ever heard of that?
I love it. No, nothing I've never actually considered before. Do you have to do like manual adjustments each week on the scores for those ones, or is there a way you can kind of do it?
Yeah, so as commissioner, I just edit the scoring. So I played 3 rookies on the weekend. I'll add 60 to my score. The boys usually put in the chat how many rookies they have, and some of them will like put a little description of their week after. Like Chase will put like, I don't know, what would you say? Like,
I usually just go like however many rookies I had. So I got like 1, and then I'll be like, you know, finally got on the board. And then I'll like put like a niche stat, like I always beat this one guy in our league, so I'll be like 7-0 against this guy. Something like that. It's just like it's our closure to the round. So everyone puts in their amount of rookies they have to like close out the round. So it's just a nice little thing that we have in our league, and it is pretty cool. Like it just gives value to some of those players that other leagues, I guess, wouldn't really use. Like no one's going to use a Blamiers or a Dersma, like you said, or even a Watkins, Dean, you've got. So
very happy with that one.
Yeah, it just adds some spice to the league, which is really cool. And Dean, I know you're advocating for Keeper to be able to do this automatically for us, so here's your chance to speak.
Yeah, I have been in contact with Ryan, and he did say he'll get to it. It's obviously not on the priorities, which I understand, but
Yeah.
I did tell him, I said, this is our rule. If you could code a way to add it automatically, that would be awesome. And yeah, he said he'll give it a go. And then I think when we put Harry on the story, that helped boost it up the priority list.
Well,
Harry
that's
Sheasel.
good to hear. That's good to hear. Like, yeah, it's a lot of it comes down to like how many people actually use it. Like, I think even some of like the like niche suggestions that I put in that were there last year have been taken away because there's just not enough people using it. Like the loophole deterrents and things like that. I just don't think there was enough like appetite for it. Sorry, I just got reminded before of a bit of a niche rule with you and your rookie rule with 20s. Like back in the day, like there's guys that have been playing like keeper leagues before there were even platforms that allowed you to play them, before Ultimate Footy went around and stuff like that. I do remember one guy telling me that they played their keeper league on a spreadsheet each week essentially. And they had a position called the Granger. And I don't know if you've ever heard of Dave Granger, Port Adelaide football. I think he passed away recently. But they obviously named him Dave Granger, but his nickname was Grave Danger because he was just mental. Like he would hit people. He would run through people, go nuts. So they had a position called the Granger. And essentially you put a player in that spot, and if they get reported, you get like something like an extra 500 points. Or something. So you got to try to pick like the wildest person on the team in the league type thing. So
Toby Green will be going pick
Zach
one.
Butters right now, he's always getting fines or whatever. Like he might be worth an extra 500 points if he gets like reported or something like that, or suspended or something like that. So that was a good little niche rule that I've heard about people playing in the past.
that's pretty crazy. Heff, talk to us a little bit about the Keeper League podcast. Like what you often, a lot of your reels you put out, someone's too good for the podcast. So you just like strictly looking at niche players or up and coming players. What's the agenda like with the Keeper League pod?
Yeah, the whole premise of it started when we started it, there was pretty much only the traders going and the draft doctors, Stevie Fizz. But probably my biggest influence was Footy Rhino, like Ryan Daniels. He's on Channel 7 now over in Perth. I think he's on Hardball Gets podcast as well with Xavier Ellis as well over there. He used to have a podcast with his mate Fen. And essentially what they just would do, they would go through every game that happened on the weekend, and it was from a fantasy perspective, but they just go through any player who might be of note, you know what I mean? So it was never just like the people that you would have in your classic teams or the premiums, because I think like if you look at the classic sort of stuff, only the top 100, 150 players kind of get discussed on those podcasts, where he would actually go through and, you know, they would it would go for hours, but they would just discuss every player or anything that was kind of worthy of noting type thing. And then the Draft Doctors was out there, but we've kind of found the same. It might talk about the top 200 players out there, but in keeper leagues, all those guys are gone. They're all taken. Like, there's no point talking about them because, like, they've already been drafted by a team and they're very hard to get them in a trade type thing. So we felt like there needed to be something for, like, those 200 to 400 ranked players. So that's kind of like where the idea kind of came from. So people playing Classic, you've got your top 100, 150. People playing your draft, regular single season draft, maybe your top 200. And then your keeper leagues, you probably need that 200 to 400 to kind of fill out the rest. So we kind of tried to focus in that range on players. But yeah, we've got a bit of a rule that if you averaged under 80 the season prior, you qualify for the podcast. Sorry, a bit of a frog in the throat at the moment. So yeah, you qualify for the podcast and then we can talk about you essentially.
That's great. That's I love that just because it's niche players. It's around that sort of 60 to 80 average, and those are often the spots that win you games in our league. Usually that sort of F4, F5, D4, D5, even an M7. Those are the guys that win you the games. Can you just act as like my fantasy therapist real quick? Because I've got a few conundrums at the moment. I took Darcy Cameron as my ruckman at round 4, I think it is, and now Oscar Steen's come into the side. It's I'm pretty upset because I feel like Oscar Steen's going to take those centre bounces, centre ball ups. Now they are. So yeah, is Darcy Cameron going to struggle now?
Possibly. The thing is, like, doing all those preseason stats. Collingwood played GWS in the preseason. Oscar Steen was pretty convincing against Kieran Briggs that day. I genuinely noticed like he was winning every hit out against him. They had to put Riccardi in there as well, but even against Riccardi, he was rucking pretty well.
So I got you didn't do your homework, Jay?
Well, I've got a feeling that it could just be like they knew that this was coming. They'd seen what they've done in the past. They knew that Steen could out-jump him, out-ruck him. He'd done it in the past. He's full of confidence. And I think they just need something else up forward. Like, they got rid of Myercheck. I've always said Collingwood aren't... this is a hard way to say without pissing off all the Collingwood fans. I don't think they're a very good team in terms of, like... Obviously, they've got Nick Dacos, Josh Dacos as a star. But they're more like a bunch of role players that all know their system so well and can kind of just, like, figure out oppositions, play in different ways and kind of take down their opposition in different ways without being the most superstar-led team. And I think that kind of reflects on their kind of key forward situation as well. Like, they picked up Jack Buller in the off-season, but I saw they even ran him through the VFL on the weekend, I reckon. So, like, it's I think they want to play a second tall just to have another target up forward. And I guess Steen's probably the better one for the tap work in that game, but it might change against different ruckman and different kind of opposition. Or it could have just been like knowing that Steen had done it before against these guys for GWS as well, against GWS as well. So, yeah, I'd be worried, but I'd be worried for any team that for any player or any coach that has a ruckman that's part of a 2-ruck system. And they're becoming more and more common at the moment. Like, even on the weekend, we saw Cherry play with Coleman Jones. I think that really factored his scoring. but we're seeing it a lot more often now. So, yeah, I'm not sure if it's to be concerned. I think maybe rucks in general might just come back to the pack. Maybe your Tim Englishes, maybe your Brody Grundys, who are always going to ruck solo, might be ahead. But, yeah, maybe Cameron does come back a little bit, but maybe a lot of other rucks like, your Lloyd Meeks and stuff like that who are rucking with Reeves come back as well,
Yeah, no, it's look, let's just say Oscar Steen he hasn't ruined my life, but he's made me question a few things. I've got Sam Draper in the wings, but he's not been scoring too well. I've got Edwards from Geelong as a rookie, but he's also not scoring too well. And then I'm waiting for that Blackiston ruck status to come through soon. So, look, if Darcy Cameron's not doing the business, then might have to give one of those guys a go.
The thing with the Blackiston, Blackiston ruck's going to come just as Nick Bryan comes back into the team, I think. So that might be short-lived as well.
Yeah, nah, it's all right. I'll figure it out. Maybe Oscar Steen won't last that long. Or maybe Darcy Cameron gets forward status and we got a bit of versatility there. So we'll see how that works. Although he did play 100% ruck in the first 3 rounds, so it won't be coming after round 6.
Whilst Blackiston hasn't scored well, he's defended well. The Blackiston blanket, you've been all over it, Chase.
Yeah. Heff, I don't know if you've noticed, but if you look through the first few rounds, Blackiston, he hasn't scored very well, but the opposing ruck hasn't scored well either. I believe he played against Sweet, who got in the 60s, and then Sherry on the weekend only 55 after coming off 150. So is that like a Blackiston thing, or is that
Meek as well, round 1?
Yeah, Meek, sorry, as well. Is that a Blackiston thing, or is that just an Essendon allowing an uncontested game and therefore there's not as many stoppages?
It's because I've got the numbers. I actually put them up here. Rucks against over the last 5 rounds, so it includes 2 games of last season, but rucks are averaging 10 points less than their last 5 average against Essendon. So they are coming down. I think there's a few factors though around it. Like Essendon are no secret, they're not a great team, but like they haven't really played against a lot of good sides either. But that said, like Sweet was coming in for his first game of the season. I reckon he'd be a little bit rusty. He came up against a dual ruck combo, I think, against Hawthorn in their first game, where Meek and Reeves kind of cancelled each other out in terms of their scoring. So it looks worse because their averages are at a certain point, but they both scored worse in those games, so it comes down. And then on the weekend they played North. Cherry just didn't have a great game. Coleman Jones was in the side with him, although it didn't really affect the rucking too much. He mainly just comes in. Cherry always sits for a good 5 or 6 minutes every quarter. If you watch him closely, I don't think it really affected him too much. I just think he had a poor game. He was probably a bit worried about how long he was going to get suspended for after he rubbed the blood in the face and that sort of stuff. So, like, I don't know if I read into the Blackiston blanket too much. It's very hard, and I've mentioned it on the podcast. We've seen a lot of shit teams play shit teams, and it's very hard to get a gauge of what's real and what's not at the moment until we see some of these top teams play bottom teams and that sort of stuff. For example, Port are a very hard team to score against at the moment, but they've only played Essendon, West Coast and North, It's are Port actually that hard to score against, or have they just had bad opposition whilst being bad themselves? You know what I mean?
Yeah. You don't read too much into the Blackiston blanket, but what type of things do you read into when you're doing your analysis? Like, for example, I like to look at, which teams score well against backs. So last year, like, load up on backs against Richmond. The year before, load up on backs against St Kilda. Are those the type of things that you look for when you're analysing the games?
Yeah, the biggest thing for me, because I write like an article each week that I have streamers' projections, and I put them out on the Instagram as well, just as easy, digestible stuff as well. Biggest thing for me I look at is opposition and scoring trends against opposition, but broken down by, their champion data classification. So not just fantasy positions, like separating key defenders from medium defenders, wingers from midfielders, rucks in there, rucks and rucks forwards. Sometimes I have a look at those kind of numbers, but the ruck forwards tend to be a bit irrelevant. And then like separating midfielder forwards, medium forwards / small forwards, whatever you want to call them, half forwards and key forwards. You know what I mean? So the biggest factor I think for judging scoring and trying to predict scoring, I reckon, is the opposition, and breaking them down by those kind of factors is the big thing. It seems silly, but I always try to judge weather as well.
I was about to ask.
Yeah. So like wet games, it doesn't always come to fruition because wet games can lead to more tackles and things like that. So there is scoring, but you find a lot less clean ball use marks, so sometimes down, that sort of stuff. So they're probably two factors I look at. And then probably the third thing is just scoring history. And then previous matchups, like who have they sent the tag to, that sort of stuff, or who's gone well against certain opponents in the past. They're probably the three biggest factors I look at when I'm trying to analyze games. But like, truth be told, like I do a lot of stats stuff and I have good graphics and stuff like that. But I honestly think the best thing that you can actually do with fantasy is just watch as much football as you can. Watch as many games, take as much in, notice where people are starting at the ball ups, notice who's going to who, because it chops and changes and there's so much stuff that happens in a game that data doesn't tell you. So I think that's probably the biggest stat categories or kind of match up things I look at. But I think the number one thing if you want to improve or get better is to actually just watch more games.
Yeah. How many games a week are you watching? How many hours are you putting into it?
Most weeks I'll watch all of them. If not, I'll catch up like on a few. I love a Monday morning KO on 2 times speed. So if I'm writing a show doc or whatever, and I see someone has scored well and I have no idea why, I'll go to the game, I'll put it on 2 times speed, and every well, there's less throw-ins now, but every throw-in I hit forward twice because that's generally about the time it takes on the keyboard. I think it's 30 seconds. We'll get to the throw-in. Every goal, I think if you hit the keyboard forward 8 times, you'll get to the next ball up. So you can probably get through a game in 45 minutes if you do it that way. I think KO's actually changed its layout a bit now. I think they've only got 10-second skips and stuff like that. But yeah, I will watch most games, and then if I don't get to a game, I'll usually watch it in twice the speed on a Monday morning before I do the podcast, just so I know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, well, that is commitment. I mean, I watch a lot of footy as well. I'd say I probably watch around like 80%, 75-80% of games. And I'm just tracking my players. I'll track my players like when they go on the bench. I find out like when they go on the bench, and then I'll be like confused if they go off at a different time. Like I had Horn Francis last year, and he'd always be the first rotation. So like if he doesn't do well in those first 5 minutes, then he's off for another 5, and then he's on 0 with 10 minutes into the first quarter, and it's shambles. So yeah, I'm pretty. I think I can.
I think I can like predict always when Andrew Brayshaw's going to go to the bench. Like it's always about that 12-minute mark, comes back on about the 8-minute mark, like every quarter type thing. Like can always kind of predict. Same with like the players that I own, like Cherry. Always knew when he was going to the bench. He always goes off in that middle patch, comes back on late. Yeah, you can kind of predict it. Although sometimes you get lucky if they need a win or whatever, they'll chuck them on for a bit longer in the last quarter, and that's always nice when that happens.
So we've done all this talking about the research and the watching we all do. Chase, you clearly watch a lot. Is there any proof in the pudding? How have you gone in your first 6 years?
Well, of the first 5 years, I've come third 4 of those 5 years, and then missed finals on one of them. But yeah, I guess because I came into this league late, a lot of the boys, I don't know, I guess they have it out for me a bit. I can be pretty annoying, but yeah, the first year I came in, I think I was 10-0. I won the first 10 games. Like this is the easiest thing ever, and then I choked finals, went out in straight sets, and yeah.
Heff chases 0-5 in games to make it to the grand final.
Yeah, so prelims and qualifiers, I'm 0-5. Yeah, so
I know that. So that feeling.
Yeah,
there
was one game.
Lost the last 2 grand finals. So yeah, I can sympathise with you.
Well, you can, but he hasn't even made it to there.
Yeah, there was one game back in 2021. It was a qualifying final between Dean and I, and I reckon the scores were level. The last game of the round, Melbourne West Coast. I had Clayton Oliver. Dean had Petrarca. So it was a battle of the superstars, and it was pretty close. I think into the last quarter, and then lightning struck, and we had a delay of about 30 minutes. I think it was like 9 p.m. on a Sunday night. Yeah, COVID. We just wanted to go to bed. Like we had enough of it, and then I think Clary got quite a few touches, but every single handball he handballed to Petrarca for a kick, and Dean ran over the top of me. And then the week after, it was a similar situation in the West Coast Freo game. I had Sean Darcy. My opponent had Andrew Gaff, and I lost by a couple of points as well. So I feel like I'm just cursed when it comes to AFL Fantasy, but that just feeds into my addiction because I want to win the league so bad, but it just doesn't seem to be happening for me.
Yeah, it's tough. Like I said before, I lost my last 2 grand finals. I think the first one I lost, I should have won. I lost by about 40 points. But Brent Daniels was a late withdrawal on the Sunday. And yeah, so I would have only, and then I had no bench cover because I used a loophole, I think it was. So I would have only needed 40 points from Brent Daniels if he played to win the game. And that was that year when he averaged 80 plus type thing. So I think he had like 160 a few weeks prior because he had one of those monster scores as well. So I think the 40 points would have been would have been an easy feat for him. And then last year I probably had like the best team all year in terms of the squad I put together. But then I had Miles Bergman going for surgery like in the last 4 rounds. I had Sam Doherty retire on me. I had another defender go down, and then I had Nick Vlosten in the second to last round, I think, break his foot. And a stupid contest he never should have gone to as well. So like I was 4 defenders down, I think, by the end of it, and it was just scraping to even put a team together by the time the grand final came around, and ended up actually going to the last game, the 3/4 time of the last game of the final round, I was 17 points down, but I didn't have. He had 4 more. He had 4, and I had 2 players playing or something like that. So he just ran over the top of me in the last quarter. So that was a bit heartbreaking. I have won one. I won 2018, and that was the year my son was born. So that was a pretty good year. I'll always remember 2018. And but like in terms of like where my league sits, where my team sits, like I think I've won 1 flag, and everyone else in the league has won, I think, 1 flag. But then we've had one guy who's just won 5 out of the years we've been playing. So like, yeah, it's pretty hard to beat that guy. But also as well, like because I do the podcast, they all know exactly what I'm thinking. They know when we get to draft, like they know what players I want. They know exactly how I like value players in trades. Like I feel like it's an extra added like challenge because everyone is inside my brain and knows what I'm thinking. So like it makes it a lot harder, I think, to be a good fantasy coach when your whole league mate is listening to your thoughts and opinions on players every week. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I agree. And it's probably a downside for me. And maybe that's why I'm struggling. The thing that I hate is that, yeah, blame it on that. The thing that I hate is like, we'll get to January, maybe even December, and like I'll start to write a few things in my notes app getting ready for the draft. But then like some of our mates who like don't really follow it that much, they just like watch 1 week of preseason and they know the players that you've already been studying 2-3 months ago. So it doesn't actually, just because you study early doesn't really make a difference. Like for example, Sam Flanders was like a forward, low averaging forward coming into the draft, but by the time the draft rolls around, everyone knows Sam Flanders is gonna score well and is a forward. So yeah.
I think it's more the players like your Lockie Jakes and like your Joe Fontes and stuff like that, the guys that have started red hot. Or even guys like Connor Butterick, who, you know, listed as a forward, I think averaged in the 50s last year, but you know that he's got a role change coming up, Western Bulldogs. Like the top end players, yeah, they're always going to be well known, but there's kind of like the players that might only go after pick 200 or whatever, they're probably where the real, and I think you even mentioned it before, like your draft's really won with those kind of last 10 picks more so than your first 10 picks, you know what I mean?
Yeah. I'm on the record saying you don't win the drafts in rounds 1 to 10, you win it in 10 to 30.
Yeah, 100%.
And
I 100% agree with that, yeah.
Yeah. What, if you're to quantify, what percentage do you think luck plays in winning fantasy? Because Chase hasn't said, but I've won 6 of our 11 seasons. Yeah. And I think that requires an element of skill. Yet when other people win, they claim it's down to luck. And yeah, what are your thoughts?
Well, in our league, like, because like our league started off quite serious, but everyone's quite casual, apart from about 4 or 5 players now. And those 4 or 5 players, we're always kind of like the finals teams. You know what I mean? Like same teams are generally down the bottom, same teams at the top. So it kind of gives you a good indication, like the people that put more time in do actually do actually kind of do better. But I think like it takes some skill to get in the top, half of your league or top, few teams in your league. But I think from there, come finals, like it takes a lot of luck, I think, from finals onwards. Like, especially if you play in like certain finals formats. Like we used to play, we played top 6 and we used to play, it was something like you had to win 3 games in a row to make the grand final if you didn't finish in the top 2 type thing. And over our 15, over our, I think it was about 15 years, just under 12 years we've been playing, 13 years we've been playing, only one team ever made it from the grand final from outside the top 2, just the way the finals kind of format was set up. And the only team that made it from outside the top 2 won the grand final, and that guy was me. But but even then, like there was an element of luck there where like my players just got hot at the right time. Like they were no way the best players throughout the year, but like I had guys like Seb Ross just on fire coming into finals. Like Justin Westhoff had been down for ages. I think he had like defender status that year or something like, something strange where he was big. I had Brendan Goddard in a retirement game just go mental. Like Paddy Ryder have like his best game of the season. Like no way near like the best team that year and win the flag. But then I have seasons like last 2 years where I've probably had the better team, but luck has it that I've either copped a late withdrawal and lost the game, or copped 4 injuries coming into finals and my team's just severely weakened, So like luck does play a huge part of it as well. So I reckon it's 50% luck, 50% skill, to be honest. It's more so those final 4 games of the season to win them, or for those final 3, depending on where you finish. It takes a lot of luck to win 3 games in a row at the best of times, So I think there is a fair element of luck involved.
Yeah, I mean, the one thing we didn't speak about is injuries, especially with the injury crisis at the moment. I mean, I came into this draft, Connor Rosie, been our Norm Smith medalist of the past 2 years, like the best player in the grand finals over the past couple of years. Missed 8 games in 11 seasons. I had pick 5. I was like, safe pick. Got to be at least like top 3 backs this year. And then, bang, does his hamstring out for 12 to 15 weeks. So there's not much you can do about that.
Now I'm in one league where I've got Goulden and Petrarca, and like this week I just didn't bother setting my team. Like there was just nothing. There was no way I could win. Especially it's a pretty shallow league. And like my team was just so far behind when that happens. I actually put a post out last week to find the worst injury, and I saw someone with the trifecta of Rosie, Goulden, and Petrarca, because they're probably like your, round 1, 2, 3 picks. Just all gone, and that's a killer.
Yeah. One of our mates got Petrarca and Goulden as his round 2 and 3. So, although he's actually sitting first on our ladder at 3-0, I guess he used their bye round scores for their buys, but now he's going to have to suffer without them. And he also had Trent Rivers, who got dropped, which was kind of crazy. And I think he's had a few other injuries as well.
Cooper Lord this week.
He's out sick, I think. So, I mean, I feel like I've been on the wrong end of the injuries over the past few years. I had Caldwell last year, who teased. I think he averaged like 110 for like 10 games, and then out for the rest of the year. Horn Francis as well, missed the last 6 to 8 weeks. Yeah, I just keep getting stiff by these injuries.
The mystery of Cam Guthrie's toe?
Yeah, Cam Guthrie. I drafted him a few years ago, and Geelong just didn't report on his injury status. Came into the season, I think it was a couple of weeks. Then he was off the injury list, and I was like, I assume he'll be back. And he was back on the injury list on a short term, then a long term. Didn't play the rest of the year, and got nothing out of him. Elliot Yeo, coming into last season, was listed as like a 2 to 3 weeks, and then he just missed the rest of the season. So I could rant all day about my injuries in the podcast, but I am aware that everyone's affected by them. But I feel like I've just been affected a bit more than other people.
Yeah, no, like I said, we all get injuries, and it is a tricky thing. But yeah, it just depends like when you get them at certain times and all that sort of stuff. It's probably a bit different when you've got season long ones. But like I said before, donuts in grand finals, players being named sub in a grand final that haven't been sub all year. That's happened to me before. And just losing, 4 or 5. Again, the Caldwell was another one I had last year. I ended up trading him for Dane Zorko because I wanted to win the league, obviously. and I wasn't going to do it having that 100 points taken off my field. So ended up trading it for Dane Zorko, but then ended up losing the grand final by 90 odd points or whatever. So like I've given up future, and now I've got a guy who's scoring well, but he's probably going to retire at the end of the year. So they're the decisions you got to weigh up though.
Yeah. The one thing with Dane Zorko though is, if you're down by 30 points and there's 5 minutes to go in a Brisbane game, if Brisbane are up, Dane Zorko can score so quickly in those last 5 minutes with those uncontested marks. He'll score 30 points in 2 minutes at the end of the game if they just try to ice it with the little chip marks. So
I think he had 70 points and a half last week. So yeah, rings true.
Heff, you're a South Australian man. I think you said you're a Port man, but you weren't too big into the Power anymore. Is there any reason why you fell out of love with the Port?
I was probably the most passionate Port Adelaide supporter 10 years ago. It's people that listen to my podcast would understand. I think I feel like just Port Adelaide have made a lot of bad decisions over the last 10 years. I don't think 2017. I don't know if you remember. Port made the top 8. We finished 5th, I reckon, and then lost to West Coast with a kick after the siren. Not a lot of people know that year that Port Adelaide, it was a strange year. We didn't actually beat any of the teams in the top 8 throughout the season. So we had enough games against bottom 8 sides, and we still ended up finishing 5th, but we didn't actually beat another top 8 side. We might have beaten one throughout the season. It was a really strange year. So we scraped into finals. And everyone sees like Port finishing 5th. It's a good achievement, even though they went out first rounds. But like we didn't actually beat anyone good. And then at the end of the season, Ken Hinkley. There was the rumor came out that Ken Hinkley had been offered this 4-year deal by Gold Coast, and that was the rumor. We'd just gone, I think, 2015-16, where we were a bottom 8 side. 17 where we looked garbage all year but somehow finished 5th and got beaten in just the exact way you would imagine coming into finals. And then it was like, all right, what do we do now? Ken Hinkley's going to leave. And I think a lot of my friends and us were like, well, let's just let him leave. He's been bottom 8 3 years in a row now. It's time to let him go. And we ended up signing him for another 4 years after that. And we just thought that was like a real dumb decision. And then it just continued. 2018, bottom 8. 2019, bottom 8. 2020, we started to have like quite a few good players come to fruition, like type thing. So we had those 3 draft picks like Rosie, Butters, Dersmar that were pretty good at the time. But a lot of our senior players were all right, like Brad Ebert, Travis Boak, Robbie Gray was still playing, Charlie Dixon was in his prime. It was actually a pretty good list. And like, I just feel like throughout that period, we just weren't playing a style of football that was conducive to winning finals. Like, yeah, we'd have some, just throughout the whole period, like we'd never beat top 4 sides, like we'd always get done by top 4 sides, but we'd be finishing high on the ladder. We'd be finishing, top in 2020. We'd be finishing, I think we finished 2nd the year after that. Like, but we never would actually beat top 4 sides. We never actually looked convincing. And to me, it was a game plan thing. Like I felt like we tried to emulate like Hawthorn contested styles and like Richmond kind of get it forward at all costs kind of styles. But other teams were doing, more slingshot, defensive press, slingshot, all that sort of stuff. And I felt like we never had the game plan. But throughout that period, a lot of supporters were kind of voicing their opinion about what like we need to do. We should probably move Ken Hinkley on. He's been there 15 years. We still haven't, 14 years. Still hasn't won us a premiership. It's time to move him on. But we get like David Koch coming out calling supporters white noise or don't know what they're talking about. People like me that are like 25-year members type thing, or 20-year members probably closer to, like it just feels like you're being insulted. And then in the end, you were like ultimately right. You know what I mean? Like he didn't win us a flag. We traded away a heap of draft capital to try to get those missing pieces for him to get a flag. But it felt like we were never going to do it under him anyway. And then we're in the state right now where it's like the team's a bit of a dumpster fire. The side's a bit of a dumpster fire. And it's all because we tried to get him the flag. But I feel like a lot of supporters were like, let's not do this. Let's, get a new coach, start a new system, be, and this goes back to like 2017 where we kind of felt like that's where it should have started. Like we should have gone with a new direction back then. Yeah, we got to a few prelims and that, but ultimately we felt like we were never going to go the full way. We never actually looked like going the full way. And like I said, now we're just in a spot where it's like he's just kind of left this dumpster fire of a team, and it's just everyone else's thing we have to deal with now. So just a few comments from administration, like I guess presidents, CEOs in the weekly communications and stuff. Just left a bit of a sour taste in my mouth with Port. So I'm more of just like a neutral. I'm still a member. I still go to games, but I don't really like mind if we win or lose. Like I just go to watch my fantasy players. Really, I get excited when I see like
there it is.
an opposition that has like, if we come up against Melbourne, I'm like, hell yeah, I can watch Jack Steele this week. Or if we come against Free, I get to watch Andrew Brayshaw, like who's in my team. Like that's probably where I get the excitement for going to footy these days, more so than supporting Port Adelaide, if that makes sense.
You're going against the number one rule. You have to put your footy team over fantasy at the games.
That's hard.
Nah, absolutely not. That's not the way I go about it.
Yeah, well, yeah, I've been saying for years that like Port Adelaide were pretenders. Like every final series, there was a lot of hype around them, and then like you said, they couldn't beat the top sides, and they always seem to be pretenders. I said last year, like there was no point of keeping Ken Hinkley there. Like, what was the point?
Ever.
Like, yeah, like what? You
and
want
just
to
a
give
year
him a
behind
send-off?
in everything, Like it's a year. We could have been a year ahead of where we are now. You know what I mean? It's just very frustrating that a lot of supporters have been voicing this in, I used to be as much of a fan to go to the AGM and stuff like that and, voice your opinion, have a talk, that sort of stuff. But it just completely like lost the passion because you just get talked down to. Like if you go to that thing, David Koch knows best apparently, but I don't know, he just comes across as more and more of an idiot every time he speaks to the media. So I've kind of just fallen out of love with the club more so because it'll always be your team, you know what I mean? But just the people in it right now, you're just not super happy with, you know what I mean?
Yeah, fair enough. Lastly, before we wrap, gather round's coming up, not next round, but the round after. What's that like in SA? Are the vibes up? Do you get around it? Do you go to the footy events? I haven't been. I think, Dean, are you going to gather round?
No. Brody is.
Yeah, our other co-host Brody's going. So yeah, what's it like in SA?
If you haven't been, it's like, when you're a little kid and like Christmas is coming up and you're just so bloody excited. Like that's gather round for me now. Like it's my Christmas like weekend type thing. So it's just if you're a footy lover, footy nuff, and fantasy as well, you get to watch all your players like that kind of weekend. It is just the best weekend that Adelaide has to offer, I think. Like I don't think I've been. I went to a Barossa game last year. I went and watched North Melbourne versus who was it? Gold Coast last year. Friends with a few North Melbourne family members of a coach type thing. So they took me down there to watch North Melbourne down there. So that was good fun. But yeah, no, I usually just stick to the Adelaide Oval games, but it's so awesome. Like the city just comes alive. Like every hotel room's booked. Like the city is just absolutely packed out. There's a festival across the river from Adelaide Oval that has like a main stage where the traders are doing their Thursday live show there this year, which is going to be pretty awesome. But it's like a party atmosphere. There's, beer tents, but then there's also stuff for the kids to do, like little like sideshows and activities and things like that. And then there's bands playing as well. So there's this whole party kind of carnival festival atmosphere. And then you walk across the bridge and you've got, back-to-back games at that Oval. Like, that never happens, And then, like, you watch one in the afternoon, you go out to the festival for a bit, and then you go back in and watch another one. And you do that for a few days in a row. Last year I got around a couple years ago, I got around the Footy and Friends, like the Dill Buckley podcast. They came and did a gather round show. We did our own live show 2 years ago on the Friday night, and that was pretty successful as well. We went pretty close to selling that one out. The pub, we actually flew Warnie in. It was kind of like a collection of fantasy people that were all in Adelaide. So we kind of just did a hour talk about just some stories and, some fantasy stuff and things like that, but a few novelty events and prizes and things like that. And it kind of just turned into an event where like the fantasy community just got together and hung out. We all walked to the footy together, watched the Port Essendon game on the hill. And then you go out afterwards. Like, so then the city as well, just kind of life, the nightlife, like, every kind of club, bar, pub is just packed. It's just a massive weekend in Adelaide, and it's just, it literally is like my Christmas. I get butterflies for it. It's amazing.
Yeah, wow, you've really talked it up there on behalf of of South Australia. I haven't been. I do want to go, but gee, if you want to drive there, petrol's pretty expensive. So if you're going to fly, it's expensive accommodation. So you might need to save up.
We got to get onto it early next year.
Yeah, definitely get onto it.
Yeah, that's the key. I think doing it early. Yeah, and but it's where if you're a footy lover, like it's worth it. I don't know, like in Melbourne, like you do have multiple games on in a weekend, so maybe it might not be as special. I don't know, but to have like 9 games on in one weekend in our city, like we're lucky we just get one a week. You know what I mean? And half the time it's the Crows, and I don't want to go watch the Crows. So like it's just a bit of a novelty, I think, to have that kind of. It feels like when I go to Melbourne and I can go watch a game at the Marvel Stadium and then at a 1 p.m. game and then get across to the MCG by 4:40 to watch the late game. You know what I mean? Like it kind of feels like that, but in our hometown, but on steroids.
Yeah, well, I mean, yeah, we do get a lot of footy in Melbourne, Victoria, but it's never really like a festival vibe. It's kind of just a given that there's going to be 3 or 4 games. You're not going to go. You're probably just going to go watch your own team, really. So I guess that festival vibe is what's really cool and unique about South Australia, and also just like for us who are Victorians, just to get out of the Melbourne footy bubble and to go experience, I guess, a different state and their culture. Because I've heard Adelaide's do things a little bit differently to us in Melbourne. So yeah, I think we should probably get down maybe next year or the year after.
Yeah.
Heff, really appreciate your time. We've been running for a while now. I know you have some fatherly duties and other commitments. So, yeah, we really appreciate you giving up your time tonight. Thanks for coming on the podcast. Do you have any closing remarks?
No, just good luck with everything. Good luck with your fantasy teams this year. Hopefully you can finally make your way through to the grand final this year. If your injuries don't play too much a part and Oscar Steen doesn't give you too many nightmares. But, apart from that, thanks for having me on. It's been great. Good to chat.